The man adjusted the scope and held his breath to shoot. The antelope was hit but still escaped. But he wasn't in a hurry because he knew the prey couldn't run far. So he followed the slope and found the antelope's blood trail and followed it. Suddenly, another blood trail crossed the antelope's blood trail. He stopped and looked in another direction. He saw a wounded dog in the distance. He was curious and went in the opposite direction to the dog. This is the top of the mountain. After a few more steps, he looked down. There were 5 cars lying in a mess. It seems there was a shootout here, dead bodies lying everywhere. He cautiously approached to observe. The scene looked like a purge between gangs. Moss is a veteran who has experienced hundreds of battles, so he is not nervous. He checked each car in turn. Most of them were tragic dead bodies. Until he opened this car, he saw a Mexican man still alive. Due to serious injuries, he only wanted a sip of water. Perhaps this was his last wish before he died. However, Moss did not bring water. He also took the man's rifle and bullets. Then he went to the back of the car. The scene before his eyes surprised him. The trunk was full of contraband. Moss understood that this was a transaction, but it seemed that an incident had occurred. Moss reasoned that there must be someone who survived the shootout. That person took the money. He didn't take the goods at the scene, proving that he was injured or alone. Moss looked around. If that person escaped, he would definitely hide in a shady place. There are 2 trees in the distance, but he can't act rashly. Moss raised his binoculars to observe. Sure enough, there was a man sitting under the tree. Looking at his posture, he must have been injured. Moss was not in a hurry. He stood still and waited for a while. The man still didn't move, so it seemed he was dead. Moss approached and raised his rifle to check. As he predicted, the seriously injured man dragged the suitcase to the tree and fell down. Moss calmly took the suitcase, then removed the dead man's silver pistol. Then he opened the suitcase, the amount of money he couldn't spend in his whole life. After packing the suitcase of money, he returned to the car. When night fell, he returned home. He didn't go into the house right away, but hid the rifle under the mobile home. Then he opened the door and walked in. His wife was watching a movie. The 2 of them loved each other very much, so Moss's wife didn't ask too much about what he brought back. Lying in bed, Moss thought of the man asking for water, so he tossed and turned and couldn't sleep. Finally, Moss took a bottle of water to bring to the Mexican man to drink. He couldn't overcome the barrier in his heart. At night, he parked his car on the mountain and walked to the scene of the shootout. But the scene had changed, because the windshield of the other car was not broken during the day. He calmly pulled out the silver pistol. The man asking for water during the day was dead. Suddenly, 2 people appeared next to his car. Damn it, Moss was discovered. The 2 men were armed and turned on the headlights and drove down the slope. Moss had no choice but to dodge and blame himself for being too kind. He shouldn't have come back here. The car chased behind, so Moss desperately ran forward. Several bullets grazed him. Moss remembered there was a big river ahead, but as soon as he ran down the slope, a bullet pierced his shoulder. Without thinking, he hurriedly jumped into the river. The 2 men didn't chase anymore, but a hunting dog was still chasing him relentlessly. Not long after, Moss got ashore, and the hunting dog still wanted to take his life. At that moment, he killed the dog. When it was dawn, Moss tore his shirt to bandage the wound on his shoulder. Then he took a bus home. He took the rifle he had hidden yesterday. His intuition told him they couldn't stay here anymore. Moss decided to go to Texas, telling his wife Carla to go to her mother's house. Carla didn't understand why. He told his wife that the police would be here around 9:30. Carla obediently went to pack her luggage. But the person who came to him first was not the police, but a cold-blooded killer. Yesterday, a principled assassin was on his way here, but he was unfortunately stopped by a police officer. He was taken to the station. This place was deserted. The police station only had 1 police officer. He was reporting to the police chief that there was a suspicious man carrying something like an oxygen tank, hoping the police chief would come and see. But as soon as he hung up the phone, the assassin attacked him. He used all his strength to roll his eyes. His eyes lit up with excitement. The police officer's legs rubbed against the floor, leaving many marks. You can see the police officer's desperate struggle. The assassin's name is Anton. He has a bit of a cleanliness fetish. After washing his hands, he took the tank and drove away in the police car. But because he had something to do, he couldn't just drive a police car like that. So on the way he stopped the car. The man didn't understand what he had done wrong. Although he didn't look like a police officer, Anton was driving a police car, so the man didn't suspect anything and got out of the car. The man just lost his life in a boring way. Anton switched to the victim's car and went to a gas station. He and the boss had a few awkward small talk. Then Anton tossed a coin to let the boss leave it to fate. The boss didn't understand why, but really couldn't stand Anton's slowness. Fortunately, he guessed the correct side of the coin. He would never know that thanks to the coin, he had just saved his life. After the night, Moss went to deliver water. Anton came to the scene of the crime. It turned out that a local mafia boss hired Anton to find the lost $2 million. First, he removed Moss's license plate, then started checking the scene. The boss also sent 2 subordinates to assist Anton. They brought a signal receiver. It turned out that the suitcase of money was attached with a tracking device. Then Anton borrowed their flashlights and suddenly took them all down. The next day, the police chief received a report of a car on fire on the road. He and his colleagues guessed that it was the car of the man who was killed on the road. The police chief reasoned that the assassin killed the deputy police officer, then killed the man on the road and stole his car. But now they don't know where he went. They went to Moss's car and saw the scene of the shootout. Now the dead bodies have started to swell, and the goods in the trunk have also disappeared. Anton followed the license plate to find Moss's house. He easily broke the lock, picked up a phone bill at the door, then observed the condition in Moss's room. It seemed that he had left the house in a hurry. Anton looked at the phone bill again and saw several phone numbers. He naturally opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of milk, sat on the owner's sofa, and started thinking. Then he went to the residential area office to ask about Moss. However, the female employee could not disclose other people's personal information, thinking that Anton would use tricks. But the female employee, like him, was a person who followed the rules. Anton didn't make it difficult for her, so he left. At this time, Moss was taking Carla to the bus station. He would go to his friend's place to borrow a car. But Carla was still very worried and always had a bad feeling. Moss had to reply happily that from now on she didn't have to go to work anymore. The police chief also came to Moss's house and saw that the lock had been broken. He saw the marks on the wall and the lock core on the ground. Then, looking at the half-empty bottle of milk on the table, he knew he was late because someone had come before him. The police chief took a glass of milk and pondered. At the same time, Moss went to a motel to rent a room and called his friend to borrow a car. Unfortunately, he couldn't contact him. He looked around the room and saw the air vent. He unscrewed it, took some money, and put the suitcase in, pushed it in so deep that almost no one could see it. On this side, Anton was also calling the numbers on the phone bill one by one to find clues about Moss. Moss went to the store to buy a set of clean clothes, but when he returned to the motel, he felt that something was wrong. So he told the driver to go around a bit. His intuition told him that this place was dangerous. So he paid more to ask the driver to take him to another motel. Anton was also coming to the city. He was passing a small bridge. He saw the crows on the bridge and conveniently shot them. When it was dawn, Moss went to an outdoor supply store. This place sells all kinds of weapons. He bought a tent pole and a gun. Returning to the motel, he shortened the gun, then sharpened the muzzle, loaded the bullets, and put them in the backpack. Then he returned to the motel, where he hid the money. Moss wanted to rent another room. He also asked the receptionist for a motel map and chose room 38 behind room 138. This room must go around the other side to enter. First, Moss determined whether room 138 was occupied. Then he took the prepared tools and connected the tent poles together. At this time, Anton also passed by the motel. Suddenly, the signal receiver lit up. He looked around and saw the signal getting stronger. He followed the signal to the front of the motel. Thus, the signal got stronger and then weaker. Anton stopped near room 139. Finally, he determined that the strongest signal came from room 138. Similarly to Moss, he also looked at the motel map. Finally, Anton chose to rent room 139. After entering the room, he went out and practiced a bit. Moss was connecting a long stick to prepare to hook the suitcase out of the air vent, while Anton checked the motel structure as if he was ready to fight. He took off his favorite leather shoes, then opened the backpack and took out his beloved tools. Moss saw the location of the suitcase, while Anton turned on the compressed air tank and then took a gun in each hand and walked out of the room barefoot. He went to room 138 and acted decisively, taking down the gangster holding the gun in the room. Next was in the bathroom. There was another person in the bathroom. Anton knew they were also sent by the mafia boss. He had previously sent 2 people to assist, but they were killed by Anton. This time he sent 3 people here. Clearly they didn't trust him. Anton also knew that not only did he have a signal receiver, but these 3 people also had one. After taking down the people, Anton sat on the bed and took off his bloodstained socks, then calmly rummaged through the drawers from bottom to top, then stared at the air vent. Anton was much smarter than those 3. He chose a coin to open the air vent cover. Inside was a drag mark. At this time, Moss had left in the night. 2 groups of subordinates lost their lives one after another. The boss felt that Anton was like a madman. This time he invited former Colonel Wells to kill Anton and take back the $2 million. Wells had learned about Anton, but because of the generous reward, he still agreed. Moss rented a room at another hotel after confirming that the receptionist left work at 10 a.m. the next morning. He gave the receptionist extra money and told him if anyone was looking for him, He must inform him. Moss had just checked in and checked the surrounding terrain. But when he lay on the bed, he always felt that something was wrong. Why did the gangsters find him? So he opened the suitcase and started checking each stack of money. Finally, he found the signal receiver. Moss finally understood. At that moment, something seemed unusual outside the room. The receptionist also didn't answer the phone. Moss gently went to the door to check, then took out the pistol and sat on the bed to guard. When the lights were turned off, a black shadow flashed by. The assassin calmly didn't push the room door right away but turned off the hallway lights. When the door was broken, Moss fired a shot and quickly jumped out the window and ran away. After jumping down, he went back into the motel from the main door. The receptionist had been killed by the assassin. Moss decided to run out the back door. Just as he was about to escape, he was shot in the hip. Moss made a tactical retreat. Even a seasoned veteran had to run away from Anton's pursuit. A car came from afar. Moss held his gun and stopped the car. But only after that the driver was shot down by Anton. Moss had to duck his head and jump into the passenger seat and step on the gas. His opponent was too calm. Almost every shot hit. The car had to stop, and Moss immediately ran across the street. Through the glass, he saw the assassin slowly approaching. This was the first time he saw Anton. He was very calm without any hesitation. Anton slowly approached the car and suddenly saw that there was no one inside. It seemed that he had miscalculated. Taking advantage of that opportunity, Moss began to counterattack. This time it was Anton's turn to be injured and run away. Then Moss went to the US-Mexico border. He wanted to go to Mexico to take refuge first. On the border, he met 3 young men. He immediately took out $500 to buy a young man's clothes at a high price and a bottle of wine in his hand. Carrying the suitcase was very difficult to move, so Moss threw the suitcase behind the barbed wire fence. No one will come here. Hiding in the grass will be temporarily safe. Wearing the young man's clothes and carrying a bottle of wine, he pretended to be a drunk to pass the checkpoint. That night, Moss slept in the square. In the morning, a few Mexican boys playing the guitar woke him up. Moss gave them $100 and asked them to take him to the hospital. It seems that money can do everything, but there is one person who is not as lucky. From the night before to the next morning, the pharmacy finally opened. Anton cut his favorite shirt, then limped to the gas tank, stuffed his shirt in and soaked it with gasoline and lit it. Taking advantage of the chaos, he went into the pharmacy to get the medicine he needed. Back at the motel, Anton spread a plastic sheet on the floor. Being a clean-loving assassin, he put the blood-stained clothes in a plastic bag. Then he injected himself with medicine and performed surgery on himself. At the police station, the female colleague reported to Police Chief Bell. The 5 cars at the scene of the shootout were all registered under the names of the dead, completely impossible to investigate. When Moss woke up in the hospital, a man appeared next to him. It was Wells. It only took him 3 hours to find Moss. He hoped to cooperate with Moss to return the money to the boss. That way Moss would not only be fine, but also receive a worthy reward. Wells will wait for his news at the hotel opposite. On this side, Police Chief Bell went to Odessa to meet Moss's wife. Carla told him that Moss had not contacted her. Bell told her about the danger Moss was facing, but Carla trusted her husband because Moss always welcomed everyone. Bell gave her a business card. If Moss called, tell him that the police chief said he would protect him. At the same time Wells was walking along the border, he guessed that Moss would not carry the suitcase of money when crossing the border. If he were him in a severely injured state, he would probably temporarily leave the suitcase here. Sure enough, Wells found it. But he didn't rush to take the suitcase, but returned to the hotel first. His plan was to take it slowly, but as soon as he got to the room, a man appeared behind him. That man was Anton. Wells was experienced, but when he saw Anton, he was frightened. He didn't expect Anton to find him first. He hurriedly explained that he could withdraw at any time and knew where the money was. In short, he hoped Anton would spare him, and assured Anton that he would definitely not disappoint him. At that moment the phone rang. Anton immediately killed Wells. Then he picked up the phone. This was his first conversation with Moss. Anton's request was too much. It was to tell Moss to come and see him, otherwise he would go to Odessa to find Moss's wife. Anton had his own principles, that Moss had to die and take responsibility for what he had done. But if he obediently returned the money, Anton guaranteed that Moss's wife could live. This was his best choice. This way of speaking made Moss very angry. Then Moss prepared to return to the US. He went into the city and went to a store to buy new clothes. Then went to the barbed wire fence to get the money back. When he called Carla, he learned about the police chief meeting her, but she still didn't say anything. Moss told his wife to go to a hotel. He would give his wife the money and let his wife go far away first, while he would prepare to fight to the end with his opponent. At this time, Anton had arrived at the boss's office. He was hired to find the money, but repeatedly sending other people was clearly disrespectful to him. As a result, The mafia boss was killed by Anton. On this side, Carla and her mother were going to the hotel. The mother kept nagging all the way. She was not very satisfied with his son-in-law. At this time, their car was being followed by Mexicans behind. On the transfer road, Carla went to buy a bus ticket. The Mexican gangster approached her mother. He actively helped her carry her luggage. With just a few questions, he found out where she wanted to go. Carla called Belle. After thinking carefully, she felt she should let the police protect her husband. She didn't want Moss to be in danger. At this time, Moss had arrived at the hotel to meet his wife. A woman saw that Moss was handsome and invited him to her room. But Moss was waiting for his wife, so the woman was refused. Not long after, the police chief arrived, but from a distance gunshots rang out. A car sped onto the highway and fled. Belle hurriedly drove to the hotel. The woman was dead in the pool. Outside the room was a seriously injured Mexican, and Moss was dead in the room. By the time it was dark outside, the hotel was full of police. Carla and her mother also arrived here. Belle looked at Moss's body, then went to the local police chief. But he told Belle that no money was found at the scene. Moss only had a few $100s on him. Perhaps the gangsters had taken the money. When Belle left, the local police chief talked about Anton at the Eagle Hotel. He killed the receptionist, then the next day returned to kill a retired army colonel. It's unbelievable that he calmly returned to the scene of the crime like that. Hearing this, Belle suddenly realized that the assassin might come back. So he drove back to the hotel to prepare for a thorough investigation. He went to the front door of the room and suddenly discovered that the lock had disappeared. At this time, Anton was hiding in the room. Belle pulled out his gun and struggled fiercely. Then he desperately pushed the door and walked into the bathroom. The window lock was opened. He knew the assassin had left. Belle sat on the sofa and pondered. He looked at the air vent next to him and the air vent that had just been removed. Perhaps Anton had taken the money. A few days later, Belle visited his uncle. His uncle was also a former police chief, now crippled and raising a bunch of cats. Coffee was brewed once a week and then drunk all week. Belle saw his uncle's situation and told him, "The guy you injured is dead in prison. But if he got out of prison, you would have no choice but to accept it." The once majestic police chief could only accept the arrangement of fate. Not long after, Carla's mother also passed away from cancer. After the funeral, she returned home and made herself a cup of coffee. Suddenly, she noticed the window was open. It turned out Anton had come here. Carla hurriedly explained that she didn't take the money. She was even in debt now. The money for her mother's funeral was also borrowed. But Anton didn't come to collect the money, but to fulfill his promise to Moss. That day, Moss didn't return the suitcase of money as he requested, so both Moss and his wife had to die. Anton decided to give her a chance. He tossed a coin for Carla to guess, but she refused to guess because this was not something a coin could decide. A moment later, Anton walked out of Carla's house. He even checked if his shoe soles were stained with blood. It seems that Carla doesn't have to pay her debts anymore.